Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's now time to talk Taiwan Semiconductor and actually a name that's moving without any earnings. We already have that catalyst behind us. We've cleared that hurdle, but perhaps there's more reason to be concerned, at least per their founder. So here to tell us more on this story is Kevin Green, Senior Markets Correspondent for the network. Kevin, I have to say that I see this headline and I'm like, wait a second. All we heard was nothing but positive commentary from their CEO management on their earnings call. And now suddenly the founder of Taiwan Semi is coming out and saying, wait a second. And this is a little bit of a concern. We're down 3.5% on this news.
Yeah, a little bit of a concern because of further investigations by the United States or even other players within this space when it comes to Taiwan Semi. So for a little bit of a background on this story here, due to an investigation or basically a teardown from a company called Tech Insights, they did find that Taiwan Semi actually had some chips within a Huawei processor, if you will. And so there was a concern, or is a concern, that some of these really advanced chips are getting in the hands of Chinese fab and semiconductor companies, which is against some of the rules and, let's say, restrictions that we have on these chips, which can directly impact Taiwan Semi. And so now there's kind of like a little bit of a back and forth. It's kind of a blame game. Taiwan Semi was the first to actually proactively reach out to the U.S. and then notified them of this particular issue. But they are blaming this company, SoftGo, as potentially the company that provided these advanced chips to some of these other Chinese companies here. So once again, there's a little bit of a fear of maybe some sanction risk or maybe some restrictions or additional restrictions being put on Taiwan Semi. But when you're kind of looking at the story, no one's really taking any type of blame right now. Everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else. And so this is the near-term risk why we are seeing the shares being sold off in today's session. But we have a long way to go to kind of get to the bottom of how these processors were able to get into the hands of these Chinese producers here.
KG, when you look at this general situation of this blossoming industry, TSMC, of course, positively exposed to it when it comes to demand for semiconductors, particularly for the use of growing artificial intelligence. We know that that's a big secular growth theme. Is this a risk that we can see in plain daylight that can slow this down, which is, hey, geopolitical, protectionist, isolated kind of, pushing back on the ease of trade policies? That's first part of the question. And two, if you're a technical trader, you just say, I don't care about any of that. This looks like a breakout retest. This is an entry point.
Yeah, I would say, can this slow down the progress of AI? I think in the near term, but really all you need, especially when you're looking at China, they just need to have enough chips to be able to reverse engineer this type of technology, right? And so over time, I would suspect that they will have some comparable technology that matches what we have here in the United States. Also consider the fact that Taiwan Semiconductor manufactures, over 90%, 95% of all of these AI processors at the moment here. So even if you are going to put any type of restrictions or sanctions on this company, how much is it really going to have an impact? Are you willing to also put at risk your own internal or domestic advances when it comes to AI? So I think there's a little bit of a double-edged sword here, which is why I would not be too concerned about this news hitting the wire for now. And maybe this is going to be a little bit of a retest. I mean, we do have a gap that we're still trying to fill, sitting at around that 190 to 192-ish area. Maybe it does come back, fill, and you get new buyers kind of stepping in. But since this is a company that is really commanding this space and it's really the only game in town to be able to churn out these chips in the way that they do, I think it does have minimal risk to the downside because of this particular action that's taking place. And hopefully that does make sense. But you're not going to find anybody else that's going to be able to supplement what Taiwan Semi can do, not only here in the United States, but around the world.
Yeah, and we've learned that. I mean, even the way that Intel has struggled to recapture some of the competing businesses that they operate. And I think that this name has been the standout, the only really player in the foundry business. So I've always seen them as a bit more resilient. But now as we go into mega cap earnings this week, we'll hear more about CapEx, the spend on AI. Obviously, I've been saying this is a major catalyst for NVIDIA. Do you also see some movement in Taiwan Semi as a result?
That might be the case. So Taiwan Semi also reports their revenue on a monthly basis. So we probably already get a little bit more of a look ahead as to how a lot of these mega cap names are actually spending. Now, the guidance moving forward, the next quarter or 2 quarters or 3 quarters might be a little bit helpful when it comes to stock price appreciation. But once again, we get high frequency data. I consider high frequency data on a monthly basis for Taiwan Semi. We know where the tides are going. And then we also get macro data from Taiwan as well that actually has a line item for semiconductor, imports or exports, if you will. So there's enough data out there to really track the trends that we are seeing in the semiconductor space. I don't think it's as helpful for Taiwan Semi, but it might be a little bit more helpful when it comes to NVIDIA, a lot of these forward guidances that we're going to get for CapEx from big names like Google and Meta.
Do you think there's more shoes to drop with things like what we're reading today within this kind of geopolitical spat, or is it just one of those situations where it's kind of built into the risk premium for this type of a stock?
I don't think it's built into the risk premium, but once again, I mean, there's no one else that can do what Taiwan Semi can do. So you can be tough on them for this situation up until a point, but they still have the ultimate leverage over any other company or any other country out there that's trying to expand AI. So we also have to kind of keep that in mind. Yes, it's a kind of a black eye. You don't really want to see this, but where's the U.S. going to go outside of Taiwan Semi? Nowhere. No one can compete with them, not in the short term. You're going to need 3, 4, even 5 years in order to try to even be close to trying to ramp up production domestically here in the United States in order to supplement this issue if it were to continue, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think that that's a great point. And that's the argument I've been making. Like, I don't know why they necessarily trade lower on some of these reports that are negative from like these ancillary AI companies, because to me, they are one in their own somewhat. But we'll leave it there. Great insight as always. And an interesting story today, Taiwan Semi. Kevin Green, senior markets correspondent for the network.